James from Texas. James, how are you doing tonight?
Fantastic. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. What would you like to talk to us about?
Well, since I'm an atheist, I thought I'd bring up the misinformation about vaccines that have caused this pandemic to be prolonged.
Now let's hear what you got to say.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's talk about it.
Well, our leaders who presented as if we're over the pandemic and we can go back to normal. My position on that, they have no authority to be saying that stuff to put us at risk. And there needs to be more positive information about how actually they did work on the vaccine for COVID-19 prior to this outbreak even happening, to give the public more confidence in how the vaccine is actually more tested than they think they believe.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out where you were coming from there. And I agree with you.
On that.
The awkward part is this information is out there. And it's not even all that difficult to find this information. I think the stumbling block is something other than access. I don't think that I think the problem is somewhere other than the information isn't out there or the information isn't public enough. I don't know what it is, but I think there's a stumbling block that makes it so that even if it is completely good, accurate information, it's not being believed. And Martin, this is going to be a fun place where you and I might get to showcase how we disagree on things. So, Martin, what do you think about all this?
I think that this is how to say this. I think that the disinformation and misinformation that has come up around COVID is a symptom of a much larger problem in America. It has nothing to do with COVID necessarily. It has to do with anti-intellectualism. And I could go on that topic for a while. I don't pretend to be an intellect. I attended college. I did not graduate college yet. But anti-intellectualism is the rejection of intellect as valid and thinking like, no, everybody has the same brain, therefore everybody's conclusions are just as valid as everybody else's. And in reality, we learn things and we get better at things by learning them and by doing them. And, as we were talking about with COVID, the number of clinical trials that the vaccine went through compared to anything else that would have been, a non-crisis, either vaccine or medication or treatment, whatever it may be. I don't have the numbers offhand, but I know that they were staggering. And obviously it's not perfect, but what we do know is that the vaccine has, without question, saved lives. You can see in the data today, the pandemic of the unvaccinated. I've heard it called, COVID-2 electric boogaloo, which is not such a great name, but it's pretty accurate because we're back, baby. We're right back where we were about a year and a half ago. And people are just as out of touch with reality now as they were then. And that's because they weren't ever in touch with reality in the first place. A lot of it, and I'm not going to name names, but I think we know who I'm talking about. A lot of it comes down to certain media agencies and the amount of money that is involved in them and the small number of owners of said media agencies. A lot of that has set the stage for this kind of disinformation. I mean, sure, there's always the Alex Jones, fringe wingnuts, but we're talking about 30 or 40% of the country just straight up rejecting what their doctor would tell them if they even asked their doctor. When I meet unvaccinated people or people who question masks or anything like that, I always ask them, I'm like, did you ask your doctor? And they're like, oh, well, Dr. Tenpenny said, no, sorry, but fuck Dr. Tenpenny. Did you ask your doctor? And I tell them, don't have that conversation with me. Go to your GP. And if you don't have one, go get one real quick or go into a clinic and sit down and say, hi, I don't think the vaccine works. I want you to explain to me and then I'll see if I believe you. and see what they say. And to my knowledge, nobody who is anti-vax has ever taken up that challenge because they don't want their conclusions to be challenged. We live in an age of extreme confirmation bias, and it's just perpetuated, as I said, by this media machine that spreads misinformation like candy to children. Anyway, I am going on a huge rant.
No,
here,
that's
I'm going to hand it back to Puck.
No, it's awesome.
And one of those things, I mean, it's a legitimate question. It seems like this, we hear about some vaccines that have taken years, if not decades, to develop. What's up with this particular virus and in this particular vaccine that, oh, look, it's only been a few months and all of a sudden they have vaccines that they think are safe enough to roll to the public. But it's because we've spent a long time studying this stuff. We're not starting this from scratch, right? I mean, the coronavirus is part of a family of viruses. So we already have a little bit of knowledge about it already. We just need to fine tune it to this particular specific virus. And the knowledge that we've gained of what makes a safe vaccine is because we've been doing this for decades. So it's not like we're doing this from scratch. It's not like we have to invent a new vaccine out of absolutely nothing. I don't know. Is this helping your question at all, James?
No, yeah, I'm right on the same page as you guys. I agree.
Okay.
However, there's a big hypocrisy when it comes to kids going back into school without wearing masks and just acting as if everything's cool. When we were at the beginning of this pandemic, here in my local region, we had a marker wanting to be at 5% of infection rate or below. We actually here never hit that mark, and school was open. And now we're in the teen high percentage rate of people infected, and school is going to be open. So it seems as if they don't really.
We lowered the bar.
Word. Yeah,
well, we lowered the bar because humans are social. We can't. And I'm not trying to get you to agree with the decisions made by your local government. I'm assuming we're talking about Texas. It says that's where you're calling from.
Yes. Yes, we are.
Yeah, I agree that the bar shouldn't be lowered, but at the same time, people are going crazy. Especially families with kids. The ones who never went into quarantine or lockdown to begin with, maybe they're having a different experience. But for the ones who have just been staying home, who don't necessarily have resources to travel safely or anything, who have just been sheltering for a year and a half now. People need to socialize, and I'm not saying that we should socialize. I'm not saying that it's a good idea to do what the CDC says not to do. You should do what the CDC advises is healthy, because we are still in a global pandemic, and the reason we're still in a global pandemic is that people aren't taking this seriously.
And then the next group of people that I want to address, and I'm sure you people have heard about this before also, there's a subset of the anti-vax community that says, well, I know that this is what is generally good for people, and I know that this is what the CDC and doctors recommend, but I know what's best for my family. And I am assessing the risks for my family, and I'm making my, the choice for me. Now, I would imagine that it would be very different, for people who have children and people who are raising children, they have to make completely different choice than I have. So it'd be fascinating to get the perspective of someone who is raising kids in this pandemic, how they make the choice they do. But that seems to be the next level for me. Not just I trust the information in a general sense. I just am making a different informed decision for my family and for me personally.
Right.
How do you feel about that, James?
Well, I was going to say, if I can just chime in real quick. I always, that's the type of person who I say, don't talk to me. Mm-hmm. Go talk to your doctor. Go talk to your child's pediatrician. Ultimately, we need to get people to be having these conversations with the right folks. I am not the right person to convince you that vaccines or the COVID-19 vaccine is viable. That's just not me. I'm happy to direct you to the resources that you need to feel reassured. The resources that I've found, such as vaccination rates causing COVID rates to drop. That isn't just correlation. We know that's causation. especially in, again, the pandemic of the unvaccinated. But I would tell people you have the right to refuse chemotherapy too, if you really genuinely think that you have a better way to beat cancer. But chemotherapy, again, not an oncologist here, but chemotherapy is generally the best way to beat cancer. And so when people say, no, I know better than my doctor, they may think they know better than their doctor, but what they're actually claiming is they know better than all of the doctors. And if you know better than all of the doctors, then why don't you have your own medical university yet?
Right.
Because you need to be training fucking doctors now, because we need those doctors to be better than the doctors that you're saying aren't good. It's this anti-intellectual American mentality. And I say American, you can go back and find years and years and years of me with American flags all over myself. I grew up watching Fox News. I bought all of Bill O'Reilly's books until about 2012 when I pulled my head out of my ass. But basically, yeah, we need to cut through this anti-intellectual vibe. And this is a great moment, if I'm just can keep monologuing here because I like this topic. This is a great moment to point out the intersection between humanism and skepticism, skepticism and intellectual, or intellect, I guess, or academia, they all kind of intersect. And that's where the humanism side comes in, is we don't need to be putting these people down. I mean, yeah, okay, it's funny when people go on anti-vax rants and have public meltdowns, but at the same time, like, have you ever had a public meltdown? It's generally because you're not in a great place in the first place. And so what we need now, I think, more than ever, and I always try to practice what I preach, but I also will say that I'm not perfect, is to make sure that we're generally kind to these folks, given the opportunity to have a meaningful conversation. If somebody comes at you and starts screaming like, oh, you commie Nazi pro-vax baby eater, like, you don't need to take that person seriously. That's not a serious person. They're not behaving like an adult and shouldn't be treated like one, as far as I'm concerned. You can dismiss them the same way you could dismiss a screaming child. But if somebody is actually like trying to engage in the conversation, don't put them down. Don't be like, oh, you're anti-intellectual. Like I use that phrase almost sparingly. I try not to, because it can come off as kind of pompous. But at the same time, if people are saying, I know better than my doctor, with no reason to, that is the definition of anti-intellectual culture. And so anyway, James was asked a question there and I jumped in.
No, James, thank you very much for giving us a call tonight. Hopefully we got your questions answered.
Yeah, no, you guys, it was a great conversation. I just wanted to bring that up and to share. I'm on the side where I think, not just in our country, but probably worldwide, I think this pandemic vaccine, the COVID-19 vaccine, should be just mandated. Everybody get it, And
then we get to talk about picky things like legislating that, and whether or not whether or not that's something our government should touch, or any government should touch.
And on that, real quick, one of the only reasons why children are generally vaccinated for like measles, smallpox, chickenpox, a couple other things,
mumps and rubella, MMR.
Yeah. Thank you, mumps. Yeah, exactly. Is because you have to have those to go to public school, and as much as people are anti-vax, they'd rather send their children to public school. And so what I think we need to do is, instead of creating just a mandate, we need to understand our audience. And I mean we, as if, we are here crafting public policy for America, us on Truth Wanted. But in all seriousness, just a straight up mandate would just be rejected, and I think possibly even lead to violence. There need to be positive incentives to get this done, such as, you cannot send your child to 7th grade or whatever the cutoff is. I think it's 12 now, 6th grade maybe, if they don't have the COVID vaccine. Do that, and then at least get the kids to get it, because at least then the parents will, and this sounds, to an anti-vaxxer, I'm sure I sound insane, but so do we all. But that way, ultimately, they can be like, oh, hey, my kid's still alive 3 years later. Maybe I should get the COVID vaccine. And can this wait 3 years? No, we need to find a better way to address this as a country. But at the same, this can't even wait 3 more days. People get fucking vaccinated. I wasn't planning on coming on a show tonight, so you're getting Martin just completely unfiltered.
Yeah. Well, we do have to move on, though, James. We got a bunch of callers on the queue, but thank you very much for giving us a call, and thank you for engaging with us.
You bet. Thanks for having me on, guys. Enjoyed it.
Have a good night.